Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Alan Escher, and I'm on the Board of Governors. You know me as your secretary of the college, and it's my distinct honor and privilege on this second Sunday seminar to introduce Mr. Enpo Tu. He is going to talk to us today about how to hire a personal CFO to help grow your healthcare practice and personal wealth. He is a graduate of UC Davis, and he also has a master's degree from the American College of Financial Services, and he currently is based in Arizona. He has facility in English, Chinese, and French. He's a chartered financial consultant, also a certified financial planner, and a chartered advisor in philanthropy. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and welcome Enpo Tu, and we look forward to your presentation.
Hey, thank you very much, Alan, and thank you everyone for joining me on your Sunday afternoon / evening. I wanted to, of course, use this time to kind of give a little background on the topic itself. As many people are in medicine to help people, they are also aware, of course, that it could be a very financially rewarding career. So, hey, how do you make the most of this career, whether it's hey, I want to work really, really hard, build wealth through my employer, or maybe there are some things that I want to do on my own, or maybe if you're very entrepreneurial and you wanted to start your own practice, that's also something that you can do. So for those of you who have kind of taken that on, chances are you're starting to build a team of individuals, whether that's CPAs, whether that's an army of financial advisors and legal staff. These are all things that you're already doing, or potentially you're doing it yourself. So what I'd like to do is actually make that distinction, and then from there go into an article I had published for the American Association of Physician Leadership. So I know that there's this disclosure that they made me put on, and to build a little bit more on Dr. Allen's introduction, I'm also the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Compliance Officer for my financial coach. Really do believe in financial planning and financial literacy for my clients. And I also, of course, run my financial coach with my day-to-day. So in my role, I was very fortunate to be asked to publish in the American Association for Physician Leadership an article on how you interview a financial advisor or an investment advisor, because ultimately this is someone who is potentially going to act as your personal CFO. And this person ideally should help you check for all of your financial blind spots. And you don't want to look over your shoulder to make sure that they're always sitting on your side. So how do you actually figure out, hey, how credible is this person? And so I did come up with a list of questions that you should go over before you even consider hiring one of them. And really, that's what I wanted to build my presentation on today, is this article and what are the implications of it? What is it that you would want to do in your day-to-day, just call it financial literacy, financial planning, financial service shopping? What are some of the skills that you yourself would like to build? So really, there's two camps. If you're looking at building any sort of wealth with financial services and financial ideas, assets, whatever it may be, let's say it's stocks, bonds, rental properties, you really have to come in with two mindsets. The first is, hey, I want to do it myself, DIY. We're going to get our hands dirty. We're going to learn every single thing. And I'm willing to go to bat and really try to put in some sweat equity. And then the second thing would be, hey, actually, I want someone to do it for me. Okay, so what is it, right? What do you need to get good at if you're going to do it yourself? Well, let's just use rental properties as an example here, right? I mean, if you're going to do it yourself, you have to figure out, hey, are you going to be good at fixing toilets? Are you going to be good at trying to find various different tools and then use them? Do you know how to look for those key areas of growth that are in your, call it region or area code? Or are you perhaps willing to, if it's in another state, fly there and resolve issues yourself? Okay, well, hey, why would you even do any of this, right? Well, it's because you want to save money on fees, or perhaps you know, you don't really trust someone. So, hey, you know, if I fail, it's on me. It's not on anyone else. I really want to retain that responsibility. And so if the toilet's clogged, okay, I'm gonna go fix it. If I can't fix it, then at least I know that I tried and you know, this is what I want to do. Now, you do have the freedom to make all the decisions, and you can certainly decide, hey, I'm going to just get rid of the whole toilet. I'm going to install a new one. But that is absolutely on you. And you have to decide, hey, this is something worth investing in. This is something that I really want to get good at. And then it potentially means that you're deciding, instead of doing locums work where maybe you're making a bunch more money, that you're instead going to focus on building up this skill set so that way you're able to get good at it. And whether that's being more efficient at fixing toilets, that's ultimately going to be something that you'd have to do if you have a do-it-yourself mindset. And take the same example, of course, into financial services of any type, whether it's, hey, I want to buy my own ETFs, I'll just follow along, or what have you. All of it is trying to work at a proficiency. But here's the thing, not even if you really enjoy real estate or picking investments, chances are there are times where you're going to need a do it for me mindset as well. Unless you want to go to law school and then figure out how to draft up your own legal documents, you're probably going to want to look for an estate planning attorney, or you're going to have to get good enough at sourcing these documents from a reputable source. So what are some of the skill sets that you're going to want to build up if you want to get good at a do it for me sort of mindset? Well, you have to get good at oversight, because ultimately you don't want to get taken advantage of. So if you go to a lawyer who is offering the lowest cost documents in town, you have to wonder, well, why is this so reasonable? Is it because perhaps this person is just inexperienced, and so really you're just kind of their first few clients, so they're artificially lowering the price to try to attract more clients? Or there is kind of that question of, okay, is this individual actually good at follow-up, follow-through, or do I have to kind of badger this person? So you have to get really good at, okay, am I able to oversight this person? Know just enough to know when I'm being taken advantage of. And in our case, the word fiduciary and best interest comes into practice. I'm here to tell you that although fiduciary is a very powerful word, the practical implications of fiduciary just means that you have the ability to push through a lawsuit more effectively when someone's acting as your fiduciary. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to have their interests 100% aligned with yours. You just have the ability to take them to court when you feel that they're in breach of that fiduciary responsibility. So that is a very good distinction. You still need to get good at oversight, and that is something that you will have to foster. So what are some of the benefits of Do It For Me? Well, the benefits here are, hey, you're able to save a bunch of time. And if you're able to find someone who, for example, will spend a good amount of time putting together your legal documents, going to court on your behalf, well, let's just say filing all of these documents in the courts, then great. You've saved yourself time, and your time is precious. You can spend it with your family. You can spend it doing other contract work that actually increases your income generating capabilities. So there are some benefits here. And hey, it is easier to fire a professional than to fire yourself. Hey, I may not be good at fixing toilets, but I hope that Joe, who I hired to go fix my toilet, is doing a good job. And if not, okay, well, I can look for Bob, Jane, or anyone else to go fix my toilets. Because ultimately I am willing to oversight them and I'm able to transfer that responsibility onto someone else. And that of course does have the thing of, hey, maybe Joe or Jane only recommends that you change your toilets. Whereas Bob over here says, hey, actually, I think all you need to do is just change the top lid latch thing. Okay, great. That's actually great to know because I could save you a bunch of money. But then the question is, hey, is this actually what I need or not? So really no matter how you go about trying to figure out your own wealth building, you are going to need both of these skills, I would say. But if you are going to build one or the other, I would really focus on the do it for me, especially if you have a busier lifestyle, because they also narrow down the amount of choices that you would have to make based on their professional decision and judgment. So let's take an example of something everyone has to do, which is file taxes, right? So if you are filing taxes yourself or through TurboTax or things of that nature, well, in this case, you have to make sure that you have all of your documents, and hey, you're able to save on paying for someone to actually file that and actually consult on how to lower those taxes in some sort of way. However, as you go through this process, you have to decide, hey, am I going to standardize? Am I going to itemize? And if you actually have your own business, well, now you have additional things that you have to be concerned about as well. Also, hey, what sort of tax mitigation strategies am I going to use? I can follow along, look through websites, periodicals, articles that I read online, things that people have sent me. But ultimately, you're going on that fishing expedition. You have to find all of the strategies, and then you have to be confident and comfortable enough to implement them. And so the hope is that if you hire a tax professional, well, you have to understand, hey, who exactly am I hiring? What is it that they're ultimately going to do for me? And one of the ways that you're able to figure out if they're good at their job potentially is look at what sort of designations, titles, and licensures they have. So a good tax professional, for example, they may be a CPA, but they may also be an enrolled agent, which means that they're able to go to the IRS and make a good case for you. Hey, this is why I felt that Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, they are actually above board here. And that's what an enrolled agent designation would do, because each one of these designations means different things. So just being a CPA means that you're good at a lot of tax stuff, but that could be corporate tax, that could be mergers and acquisitions. You need CPAs for a lot of different reasons. So knowing, hey, what is their background and what is their additional designations and education, that does help you have a little bit of a better insight into what this individual is about to do for you. Now, you have to pay the fees for this individual. And oftentimes finding a good tax professional means that you're not necessarily paying the H&R Block person who may be a tax filer and tax preparer, but they may not have any additional training beyond just their experience filing taxes. Now, I brought this up earlier. Best interests, fiduciary, your tax professional, that person, what is it that ultimately is that stamp, that guarantee? Well, chances are they're going to have to carry errors and omission insurance, similar to how everyone in this room who practices medicine has to carry some sort of malpractice. This tax professional also has to do something similar. So that way you have some sort of recourse, and you know that if in the unlikely case that you get audited and then they don't want to represent you, well, now you have some recourse here. And the idea is if you do get audited, this person's going instead of you. So what is it that is the goal, right? I mean, if you can file your own taxes, take the standard deduction, then try to lower your costs as much as possible. But ideally, they're not just doing that. They're not just filing the taxes. What they're going to try to do is they're going to try to lower it as much as legally possible. And what they're going to do is they're going to have their software that hopefully runs all of your financials, not just, hey, here's what I spent, here's all my receipts, but also, hey, here's my income, here's how much I spend, here's some of the strategies I may want to consider, whether it is putting together a backdoor Roth conversion strategy, or bringing to your attention that you, if you have a small business, a cash balance pension plan or a 401k with profit sharing. All of these things are things that you're hoping that a good tax professional will bring to you. And that's it as an additional service. So when you think about, hey, I'm going to do it myself, I'm just going to file my taxes, I'm going to use the tax filing software. I mean, that's great, but you know that your TurboTax isn't necessarily going to be as helpful and as proactive as hopefully a good tax profession. And so that's where I really would say that a hiring strategy, a do it for me strategy, and steps on how to achieve that, that's going to be something that you're going to need to get good at over time. This is not something that you get good at right away. Same for do it yourselfers. And I think that's often a misconception, right? Where if you're doing it yourself, you know that you're starting at a point where you might not be good at doing your taxes, but over time, you're hoping you get better at it. Same for do it for me, where at first you may not know the right questions to ask, but then you go to the wrong tax professional and you're just constantly paying more and more, and they're not really coming up with any ideas, and you have to constantly be the one to bring them. Well, that is a clear lack of benefit for you, because chances are you could file your own standard deduction. You're looking for them to do more than that for you. And so constantly you're getting better at asking these questions and figuring out, hey, how do I get better at asking people to do things for me? So I'm going to use an example here of what you are most likely experiencing whenever you go to a wealth professional, a personal CFO, and you're looking to hire. So traditionally, if you go to an investment manager, your Vanguards, your Charles Schwabs, your Fidelities of the world, you're probably bringing some very good financial questions like, hey, how am I able to get good returns? How am I able to protect my family? How am I able to be on track to achieve all of these goals? Well, chances are they're very good at their job. But what is their job? Their job is to manage your money at a reasonable price, a reasonable fee. And then from there, they're going to try to figure out, hey, is what I am doing going to help you reach those goals? And you gotta just tell me what your goals are. So using this example, let's say you want to buy rental property and you're thinking, hey, that's actually a good way for me to build up wealth. You bring this to your investment advisor and they may say, yeah, that sounds great, but let's not lose the forest for the trees here. You can't just sell your bathroom at retirement. You got to sell the whole thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put you in a broad base of investments, and then from there, once you've built up your 401k, we've built up your investments, hey, then let's consider maybe doing some of that rental property stuff. So in this scenario, we're going back to, well, what you really want to do is, for a reasonable fee, I'm going to take that extra money that you would have been putting towards paying off a rental property into mutual funds, ETFs, or what have you. And from there, hey, you're going to be on track. And that's where that 15% of the planning comes in. Now, I will say this is our approach to planning. It's not the only one, but ideally, this is what we think would probably work best for someone. Is if you're going to hire a personal CFO, they have to build a team around you. So starting with your goals, what are they? And you really have to think about it. And hopefully you have someone that sits on your side of the table and just says, hey, I want you to tell me, outside of just, I want to retire as early as possible, passive income, mailbox money, not have to worry about, okay, well, what else do you want to do? Do you want to send your children to college? Do you want to potentially do some gifting? Are there some milestones along the way before you no longer have to generate income by going to work? Well, let's say that you want to work indefinitely. Okay, well, when do you want the luxury of working more favorable terms and maybe being more flexible about it? You really need to identify, hey, what are we even doing here? Why is it that we're doing any of the things that we're currently doing? Whether it is investing in rental property, whether it is doing some sort of asset strategy, asset accumulation strategy. And once you have your goals in mind, either you're developing them yourself or you're developing them with a professional, then you can start accumulating that team around you. Whether, hey, maybe I want a CPA who can file my taxes because I don't really want to get good at tax strategy and tax planning, but I do want to get good at investing. I've read White Coat Investor, I've read Vanguard's website, the Boglehead website. I think I can put together a reasonable ETF portfolio and manage it myself. Okay, great. Now you are doing that piece as a do-it-yourself piece, and then you have a do-it-for-me piece on the tax plan. Maybe it is the case that you don't want to go to law school and learn how to save a few dollars drafting up documents yourself, but instead you're going to actually go out there and find someone. You're going to interview a bunch of attorneys and then come to the decision, hey, this person is credible. I understand what this person is putting together. They have the document generation services, and they have the ability to give me some ideas occasionally on how to mitigate any, maybe even state level estate taxes. Because what many people don't realize is that even though the federal limits are extremely high, there actually are a few states, for example, Pennsylvania, where there is a state level estate tax. And that's going to be something that you're going to need to consider pretty heavily when you're going out there and doing the interviewing processes. Hey, does my professional understand my situation in the state I'm living in? Because sometimes when you do use those national services that kind of create a lot of generic documents, you may not get that level of detail. So it goes into being a better shopper, understanding, hey, how am I able to ask these questions? And what are the questions that I need to ask? And thinking through what your goals are first, that helps you ask those questions better. Because if you know that you're going to have a lot of assets that are going to be very illiquid, let's say you own a bunch of apartment buildings, medical buildings, your practice, at the very end of your lifetime, you may have accumulated a bunch of illiquid assets. And then when your spouse, your children, any of your surviving relatives tries to untangle that, well, now they're being forced to liquidate these very illiquid assets to meet the demands of the estate tax or run afoul of the IRS or their state tax entity. And these are all going to be things that maybe you don't need to deal with. But if you are planning to leave your assets behind in a manageable way, then you want to make sure that it's being done correctly. And if you feel confident and comfortable doing it yourself, then just know that you have to keep all of these things in mind that I've just shared with you today. Or you're going to have to get good at saying, okay, how do I ask an estate planning attorney these questions and come up with these questions in a way that is going to help me decide, does this person know what they're talking about for estate planning? So each one of these things are things that could be a part of your financial picture. Maybe none of them are. That's where having a good CFO comes into play. It could be, hey, I actually have a really good CPA, and the CPA is a rock star. And I believe that they can take on this role, but just know that they are going to be looking at it from a very specific framework. And you may not get perhaps as much of a robust understanding of family governance or or any other areas, but at the very least, you have to start somewhere. And ideally, you're going to be building up your team along the way. And if you're unable to build up that team, I do highly encourage you to build up those skills. Start asking, hey, what are good questions? And whenever you go to any profession, try to build up that skill, because you may not get it right all the time or right away, but anything that you work at, you get better at. Just like in any do-it-yourself skill, you get better at. And so that's where even do it for me is a skill that you would over time improve upon. So I do have my AAPL publication, which I can send to you. Here's my email to at least get you started on one of the core areas, which is going to be for the investment/financial advisor. So this is going to be the individual who is going to manage your assets, and they're probably going to help you come up with some wealth building strategies. Well, hey, what are some good questions to ask them? Well, here's one. Have you ever stolen from a client in the past? I mean, that would be a really weird question to ask, and you might be hesitant to ask it. But there actually is a way to ask where you're not being rude, and you're always going to get the truth. And so that is an article that I wrote. If you would like a copy of it, I'm happy to email it out. And so yeah, that is my presentation today. I wanted to keep it pretty light and really just have the rest of the time open for any sort of questions.
All right. Thank you, Enpo. Great presentation. Very important topic. I wanted to start off myself with a couple of questions. In my case, I was very lucky here in Tampa, Florida. Many years ago, I found a CPA who actually went to medical school, decided he didn't want to become a doctor after a year. And so
Yeah.
he has a CPA practice that is geared towards physicians and dentists. So I lucked out. But for the rest of us that are scattered around the country, any advice on how to get a competent CPA? Is it strictly by referral, or what suggestions do you have early in someone's career?
Yeah, so early in your career, you have a few options, right? I think the first option is doing it yourself. I mean, do you feel that is a life skill that you want to work on? And do you want to get good at understanding the tax code? Do you want to get good at filling out the forms, or maybe identifying software that can help you with the tax file? And I think that really it goes down to, hey, do you feel that there is something to be gained and saved by doing that? But let's say you go, actually, this is not really a good use of my time. I don't really want to get good at either, filing or identifying what software can spit out the best output. Well, now you start going down the how do I interview a CPA route, and where do I even start, right? Of course, you're probably going to want to ask friends or family, and maybe they do have someone that is good. But now it's kind of time to decide, hey, how do I know if they are good? How do I know if they'll do a good job? And really, you'd have to ask, what percentage of your clients do you have that are filing for just standard deduction versus itemized? Because if you think, the standard deduction is really high. And if you were trying to go about figuring out if you have a good CPA, I would start there. For the last 2 years, have they been giving you standard deductions? And let's say that they have, because the standard deduction is super high, and that's really the best thing that you could have done. Well, have they come up with any other tax saving scenarios for you? Have they consulted you on any other, call it proactive ways for you to mitigate those taxes? Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't pay their fair share. In fact, you should, but you shouldn't leave a tip. And more often than not, if you're going to file your taxes, there are ways that you can structure it if you do not need the income, where you're able to mitigate the amount you pay based off of structuring your finances in an appropriate way. And so asking your CPA or asking the CPA that you're looking to interview, hey, what percentage of your clients are just taking a standard deduction versus how many of them are itemized? Also gives you a sense of, hey, how much work do they really do every year? Because when you go into itemization land and you're really trying to get itemization, that's where you're adding additional value.
And then one other question I had was, I remember probably 22, 23 years ago, I was a new attending and all of a sudden I had money after being dirt poor for many years. And so I had all of a sudden people coming to me with investment ideas. Put 100,000 here, put however much into this. And some worked out, some did not work out. So any advice to our newer physicians, or even if we have maybe some residents who are fellows who are getting ready to graduate, to avoid the making a bad investment right out as a new attending?
Yeah, so I would say first, yeah, send me an email. I'll send you that article. Make sure that whoever it is that you want to trust with your money, hey, why don't you ask them some good questions, first and foremost. But to answer your question in total, how do you avoid poor investments? I think it goes back to what I had kind of noted earlier, right? Where you gotta go back. What is your goal? If your goal, for example, is, hey, I want to retire as early as possible. I don't want to have to work in order to generate income, in order to live and to save. Then you have to think, hey, is what I am doing actually going to get me there? And I do mean that, right? Because I'm going to use rental properties because more often than not, that's really good advice that people get all the time, where they buy a rental property and then over time, between the rents and the equity they build up in their home, they're able to, when they retire, maybe live off the rents, and then at some point, maybe they can sell the public property as well. But ultimately, the question here is, hey, is that going to work for you? Because if you're looking to retire early and you have a 30-year mortgage on this rental property, I mean, the math on that is going to ask you potentially to work for at least that long. And
Right.
then from there, you have the additional question of, well, are you good at fixing toilets? And if the answer is no, and then you want to hire someone to go fix toilets, okay, well, are you good at that? And can you perhaps understand that investment enough where, let's say you don't want to fix toilets or hire someone to fix toilets, are you good at interviewing and structuring an incentive package where you can then hire someone to go hire someone to go hire someone to go fix toilets? Because property management companies are not this one size fits all industry where their incentive structures are necessarily aligned with your own. So I think another thing is, hey, how do you make money? I mean, that's one of the really good questions whenever someone comes to you with an idea. And it could sometimes be your friends and family, where they say, hey, there's this real estate project that a few buddies and I are getting into together. Would you like to join? And more often than not, one of the buddies is the general manager or something along those lines, where sure, your family wants you to succeed, and more often than not, they don't have uh, I guess a dog in this fight, but also because they don't necessarily have anything at stake. Well, you have to think, well, I at least have something at stake. You're asking me to put money on this, so I'm going to do my due diligence, ask questions, try to understand if what I am getting is something I understand that I can fully explain and imagine myself doing. I had a client recently, pediatric surgeon, wife's also a surgeon. and they had just graduated not too long ago. They were a resident, and for the first time, more money was coming in than going out. And first things first, they're like, well, we're not gonna, nothing's gonna change. We're gonna work hard and we're gonna save and we're gonna live like we're residents.
Right.
Uh, and the first thing I told them was, hey, actually, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work. I mean, you worked hard for this money. I mean, talk about delayed gratification. You're, in your early 30s, and now you're making really, really good money. I understand that you're going to want to live a little bit better. The ramen noodles and Gatorade days are starting to fade into memory. But we're not going to want too much lifestyle creep. But what we're going to want to do is make gradual, sustainable improvements in your lifestyle. And we're going to want to come up with an investing strategy or something along those lines, or else what's going to happen is money's going to burn a hole through your pocket. And they're like, yeah, okay, I get that, right? And the next few months, they come up with ideas. Everything from, hey, I'm thinking about buying some land, and they're in Florida. I'm thinking about buying some land in Florida and opening up a farm, and then I'm going to teach my girls how to farm. And we're gonna
Hmm.
and we're going to get all these tax credits, but no, it's I'm going to work the earth with my land with my hands, and I just looked at him and go, okay, so you're a surgeon, right? And you are making, call it $500,000 every year, and you could probably get locums work at God knows how much hundreds of dollars an hour. You have 10 hours of free time a week, maybe, and you're going to spend it forcing your wife and kids to do surf labor. You're gonna plow fields. And it's like, well, no, I could probably hire some people to maintain the land. And I just going, okay, so now you're going to play Farmville, but in real life. And so what rate of return are you hoping for on this farm? And it's like, well, I mean, it's interesting lifestyle thing, and so I think more often than not, we just lose sight of, well, why are we investing in this? What are we hoping to gain from this? And also, can I realistically do it? I mean, sometimes it's not even a matter if I want to go fix toilets. It's, hey, do I even have time to go fix toilets?
Right. Well, that's true. And I knew an ENT early in my career, and they got a hobby farm in Illinois, and they knew going in, their CPA said, you're not going to be working the earth with your $15 million hands, right? What they really ended up doing was a hobby farm, and it worked out really well for them. You spoke about Pennsylvania, and Dr. Huffnagel has a question. What is a reasonable fee for a financial advisor to charge? And she is out of Thomas Jefferson University in Philadelphia.
So my CEO has a funny story about that, where he was watching a TV show a long time ago, and someone's car broke down in the middle of nowhere, and they walk into town, and there's a mechanic, and the mechanics, got the monkey wrench, just tapping it on the hand, and the guy goes, hey, my car broke down, and I need a tow bag into town and for you to fix my car, and how much is this going to cost? And the mechanic goes, how much you got? And so I think that more often than not, when it comes to financial advisory fees, there's been a lot of fee compression in the industry. I'm going to be the first to tell you that, right? The days of a broker charging X amount of spread, but for stock trades, I mean, that's long since been over. Um, but overall, that evolution is still ongoing. There is a continuous change in the industry, where before the good guys were the people selling 15% loaded mutual funds, so that way you can get your money professionally managed. And then it became, hey, let me manage your money for 2%. And then it became, hey, let me manage it for 1%. And I would say that there is a clear race afoot. But just know that there's got to be something on the other end of that equation where you're getting a certain amount of fee, you're getting a certain amount of service. So you also have to think, okay, am I going to call into a 1-800 number, or what exactly am I getting for the fees I'm paying? Before you even say, hey, what is a reasonable fee? Because it may depend on what they're doing for you. If you want to use kind of an analogy, right? There's kind of the hospital approach, and then there's maybe the primary care physician approach or concierge medicine approach, right? So in the hospital approach of financial planning, you go to one shop and they will do everything for you. They'll do your insurances, they'll do your investments, they'll coordinate a CPA with you, they'll perhaps have a in-house lawyer, and they're going to charge you for it. And it may be north of 1%. And that's because they're wrapping all those services around. But the idea is that they will take care of you all in one building. You just go there. Now, the primary care physician approach or primary care approach, concierge approach, so to speak, that's going to be, okay, one person is going to coordinate all of those things for you. And you may get the best of all worlds, but just know that you're not going to get it all under one shop. They're not going to be a CPA that then also does your investments, or they're not going to be an investment advisor that then also does your legal. They're going to perhaps do it separately. And so it may be south of 1%, but using 1% as what the industry generally charges and going up and down based on the amount of services you need, I think that's really what you're going to want to look for. Because if you truly just need someone who will take your money, put it through their trading algorithm, so to speak, there is even the option of robo-advisors, where essentially someone has built a preset portfolio that gets rebalanced and just spits out your investment results for you. But then again, you would not expect that robo advisory service to explain their trades, to handhold you, to try to explain, hey, this is exactly why you return this, and this part of our portfolio is doing this, and this part of our portfolio is doing that. When you call that 1-800 number, you're not going to get put in charge of the person making those trades. Instead, you're going to be put into a very long queue line where ultimately they'll refer you to their investment doctrine, whatever it may be. And this would be the same for any robo-advisory service, or for even the lower cost, smart, intelligent portfolios. You get a Charles Schwab and Vanguard and things of that nature. But I would say if you're looking for someone, you don't necessarily want the lowest cost. You definitely don't want to feel like you're paying the highest. But it's kind of like when I drive all the time to work, and there's this bus that passes all the time, and on the side there's a law firm, and their slogan is Arizona's best discount lawyers. And I think to myself, wow, I can't imagine. I call my friends. I go, oh my God, I'm in trouble. Oh my God, I'm struggling here. Make sure to get me an attorney. And then my friend goes, it's okay. I got you the cheapest lawyer I could find. And you're like, I don't want to go to jail. just get me the best lawyer you can find.
That's so true. I have one other question that I think I'm curious about your viewpoint on.
Sure.
You mentioned white coat investor, and right
Yeah.
now, especially with younger docs,
Yeah.
we are seeing people coming out of residency, and they're telling us when we're recruiting, they're saying, "Hey, I want to be out of medicine in my 50s," which is amazing because most of us were around 30 or early 30s when we finished our training. So it's a very different generation that's coming out of medical school now, out of residency. And then I read an article related to this, that this concept of FIRE, which is financial independence, FIRE early, obviously a complicated subject. Any they can and live very frugally. So I was curious what your advice is on this fire concept, which I never heard of until probably like 2 or 3 years ago when it didn't really matter anymore for my career.
Yeah, so what's actually very interesting is there's another website out there called Physician on Fire. And it was started by Leaf. Interestingly enough, we recently went into partnership with them as well because we're identifying the very same things. I saw you about to meet Dr. Allen. Are you familiar with Physician on Fire as well?
Not heard of that one.
All right. Well, Physician on Fire is certainly one of those very interesting, um, I guess, influencers. They now have a new leadership team that is part of that staff, and they're really yeah they're just seeing a lot of traction with that space, that community, and it is certainly vibrant. So. I I want to be clear when say that retirement means a lot of things to a lot of different people. It could be I don't want to move. I just want to sit on my couch and watch TV until mind rot sets in. That's fine. That's not a bad thing. It's more just, hey, that is what I want to do. I don't ever want to move again. But more often than not, when I speak with the people that are actually successful at fire, it's really hard for them to turn it off. And what I mean by turn it off is if you are busting your butt for 10, 20, 30 years in order to retire early, the likelihood of you then turning around and sitting around and doing nothing contently for the remaining 20, 30, 40 years of your life, it's very unlikely. And so what's going to end up happening is you're going to retire in quotations. And what's going to happen instead is you're probably going to pick up consulting. You're going to occasionally do locums work, or you might volunteer. And don't get me wrong, when it comes to retiring early, it just means that you get more opportunity to do the things that you want to do and on the terms you want to do it. And we definitely see a lot more people of all ages wanting to retire a little early because it's hard work. There's a reason why every medical professional is well compensated. It's because it's work. They're bringing in revenue, and that revenue is brought in, on a very consistent basis because of this well-oiled machine. And you're part of that machine. And sometimes wanting to go break out, do your own thing. That's one thing that you can do. You're also able to say, hey, actually, I'm okay. I'm going to just continue to work at building my assets slowly, and then at some point I'm looking to retire. That's kind of your traditional retirement. But if you really want to get at it and really want to retire early, you just have to define retirement first. I would say that, and be honest with yourself. Like, hey, retirement for me is I want to not have to worry about working a 40-hour week. And that's what retirement is. And if I work 20 hours, that's fine. If I work 15 hours, that's fine. But just not the 40. Okay, well, that's not necessarily your traditional, I'm not going to bring any more income in discussion. It kind of reminds me of this one article I read where it's like this young millennial has retired early, and then you find out that they're living in their van, and they're still doing freelance writing in their van. And I'm just thinking to myself, gosh, I don't imagine that as retirement for the vast majority of people that are saying they're retired. You're instead thinking of, hey, I'm traveling the world, I'm enjoying it. But I'll give you an example of a couple that I have that retired early. So they're in their mid 50s. And that might be a little too late for some, but mid 50s for most is, that's actually pretty impressive in my opinion. So they're in their mid-50s, but what they did was they were disciplined in saving a bunch of money, and they don't have kids, so they don't have to worry about that. And so they were able to pile away a lot of money during their working careers. And the husband had a pension. The wife was a concierge medicine doc, but the husband had a pension through the government. And so really they just needed to build up enough income to get them to that pension. And then once the pension kicks in, then the Social Security will kick in later, and it creates that nice, comfortable layer, that nice, comfortable floor. However, as a high income earner, if you get used to living that lifestyle of, hey, I want to take 2 vacations a week with, or 2 vacations a year with my family, not inexpensive vacations, that's hard to replicate under a true fire scenario. But it is kind of interesting where it's a bit of a seesaw, right? Where if you're really doing fire correctly, you're not going on vacations because you need to save that money anyways. So if you're willing to maintain that lifestyle indefinitely, then you're probably good.
So true. Anyone else that has a question, please feel free to put it in the chat in our closing minutes here. I think one of the tricky things about retirement is I think you're correct. Retirement means so many different things to so many people. It can mean working half time. I've seen people that are like, I'm retired, and like they still work 20 hours a week. Or I've seen people they work full time, but they're no longer being paid. They're a full time volunteer. So I think you're right. It depends what you're used to. I do agree. If you're working and you're staying busy, it's going to be really tough to just turn that off. You have to have something else that is going to occupy your time. I have a colleague who retired, and he said it's 6 Saturdays and a Sunday. That's his life now. Uh, but definitely a very important topic. So, any closing remarks? I do want to just repeat your email here, etu@myfinancialcoach.com. This is the very key email to get the advice or help, or at least get pointed in the right direction for all of our members. We will have this also available archived in our CME section.
All right. I think I may have reached kind of the end of my Wi-Fi's cooperation. I think I might have missed that last section. But Alan, I did hear, hey, any closing remarks?
Yes.
Okay. So I will say this, right? Whether or not you want to do everything yourself or do some of it yourself, I think that it's good to get used to asking questions and coming up with a list of questions and not just using people because other people are using people. And I think that that is so vital because more often than not, if you were to really go at the heart of it, so why'd you work with them? It more often than not is, well, if it is not really a, hey, this person referred this person to me, more often than not, it's, hey, this person just gave me a call and I picked up and they've been working with me ever since and they seem to be doing a good job. But that's it's almost like, you get a mailer in the mail, and people mail you offers or credit cards and everything all the time because enough people get that mailer and go, you know what? Looks good. Let me just sign off. I've been looking for a credit card. That's great. And so really if that is the way that you are going about also finding your financial professionals, whatever sort of category they're in, then what you really need to do is think, hey, am I at least asking them the right questions before I say yes? Because they're going to get a lot of solicitations. To Dr. Allen's point, I mean, you get out of medical school, you're going to find an army of people at your door knocking and giving you ideas. So I would say start getting good at asking them good questions and just figure out, hey, is this the answer that I find acceptable?
Thank, thank you so much, Enpo. Great presentation. Lots of good material here. Very important stuff for all of our members, the past, present, and future. I look forward to getting to know you better and learning more about myfinancialcoach.com. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, everyone.